In 1971, French-Canadian hard psych band Vous Voisins released their singular album Holocauste À Montréal, quickly recalled and reissued eponymously, and from it the track
Le monstre de la main aux yeux mains Monstre,
which translates to the monster of the hand or the monster hand. Okay, hear that really brimming, icy organ that's coming out. It's coming out of my left speaker right here, just over the darker, kind of murkier tones. Oh, hear that Mellotron just kind of oozing right out of those like bass lines, dark and kind of like almost like half spoken, like soliloquy. That in that French way where it sounds like the singer's kind of like reciting a poem more than singing. This sounds quite ahead of its time for 1971. Already I'm hearing like elements of like Ange, like circa 1974. Heck, or at least one of the tracks on that Visitors album, yeah. Yeah, like So and Co, or like a whole slew of like francophone acts from the mid '70s. Like the Mellotron sound for one. Like I guess I had forgotten that it's on this album. I didn't even think that instrument made it to Canada as early as 1971. But then again, I was surprised to find it on some 1976 recordings, like from Canada. Like.
Il bouche toute la ruelle, il carrosse toutes les poubelles. Moi, je chatte mon roll-pop, mon sang tournant que chat.
I'm hearing like several different notes at the same time, just kind of converging from that Mellotron. It's like one's coming out, just kind of like beckoning in from this side, another like.
Son grand nez de déchet vient me flairer tout par il parle en machine gun, j'en peux plus, j'emballe ma gomme. Il gronde, il tonne, il pète, quand sonne ma dernière heure.
That like ominous kind of horror, like surreal horror. I just.
Minute, je vais être prêt, il est venu comme un voleur.
Oh, I love the way those converge. Yeah, that heavy organ riff coming out of my left speaker, and then that kind of fuzz tinged guitar coming out of my right. Great organ, like straight out of like the UK 1970 sound, mixed with this like French element, this kind of chanson influenced psychedelic hard rock of the francophone world. Don't you love it when a piece can go from being really heavy, really bone crushing, and then go through all these changes and ultimately give you a really pastoral, clean, like soft passage. Okay, hey, once again, we got some Marshall drums coming up. Yeah, I did. I just covered something like this yesterday, as a matter of fact, and it had me thinking of the midsection from Trespass. Yeah, it was one of the passages on that Visitors album. Yeah, that like sustain, long, kind of dark sustain, quiet, and yet that Marshall precision kind of comes up slowly, emerges from like almost silence, and then gets louder or more, and it indicates that something that an impending force is about to materialize. I love those chromatic riffs. Da na 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 na. And now we get that like early like Moog synthesizer. It's coming out of my left speaker, just interacting, just corrupting that riff that's coming out of the right, like with the bass guitar, organ, and just the drum pile driving over it all. I'm trying to think, where have I heard that kind of synthesizer tone before? I can't think of anything off. I probably have, but. The way it was kind of like wavering like that, and then kind of like going into that kind of like scribbly bit there, kind of sounds like something that Manfred Mann would have done around this period. Although the sound isn't quite, a little bit different. Like a windy sound is coming up through it. Kind of like a stormy vibe is gathering momentum. There's like a droney bottom end that's just getting thicker and fuller. That is quite like an intense. The way that synthesizer is just like fighting against the cadence of the rest of the instruments. So epic, that kind of like rising from the other type of like heavy colossal organ bass riff, and then the like sustained lyrical guitar leads, right over it, and the drum pile driving it all. Really expressive vocals, that theatrical French tradition. Once again, it's almost like half like just kind of like shouting without really even so much singing. It seems like a lot of these French vocalists like kind of like walk the fine line between singing as we understand it in the Anglosphere and like reciting or just kind of like talk acting.
Il monte sa patte ici, il avance sa grosse face là, il grogne tout le kit, il est pire que Dracula, le cœur d'André de Bin, c'est le monstre de la main.
Oh, the three elements right there, his voice, and around that bass line, that kind of ominous bass line, and that those shivery, sustained kind of mellotrons around it.
Il est venu par en arrière, il m'a pris par surprise, sacré tapette de derrière, c'était comme au temps de la crise.
What is it about that bass line that makes it kind of ominous? I think it's like that one note that kind of, right as it's resolving, it hits that, that one note that you don't expect, and yeah, it goes like a half step where you'd expect a full step or something. And
M'ôter ma chemise, j'échappe mon colbot, mon sang tourne en cachotte, j'ai avalé ma gomme, mais j'ai crié avant qu'il me casse, où est-ce qui est mon état de grâce, où est-ce qui est mon état de grâce, où est-ce qui est mon état de grâce.
well, quite a voice there, yeah. In fact, it's hard to cut into him. It's like, if you know what he's singing about, like the words, I know that it's about monsters, I can tell from the translation of the title, but yeah, if you know the plot, yeah, leave a comment on that.
Maudit voleur.
Okay, that was the Vos Voisins with,
Le monstre de la main aux mains Monstre.
yeah, the monster of the hand or the monster hand. And let's hear another track from the album, why don't we?
Il y a juste de T'ça.
Which translates to There's Just That. Now, once again, I'm hearing some similarities to riffs that would be done kind of a little bit later in the decade by French acts. Yeah, like something off like an Ange album or like Pentacle or. I'm thinking that I'm starting to just think now that maybe the French and Quebec bands had a certain like way of appropriating the blues rock influence. Like it would have like a certain cadence that was uniquely French to it. Maybe it's the way it's kind of like a few skip notes and then like it'll have kind of like a slight maybe gallop to it and then the rhythm will like drop out for a couple of counts. I'm trying to isolate what it is that this unique French take on heavy blues, because I've heard this pattern in quite a few Francophile like heavy psych songs of the period. Oh, beautiful sustained bridge right there, yeah. Piano, like that rising mellotron accented by that piano. This, despite being a very musical album, it's also a very these songs are quite lyrical. If you know what they're singing about, yeah, please leave a comment about that. What I can do is just marvel at the voice as an instrument unto itself, because, like, you know, the French language has a very beautiful sound to it, the syllables and all. And I like it. That's why I listen to so much music from France. Maybe I'm better off not really understanding much because I don't know. Maybe knowing would ruin it. Part of these. I don't know. I am curious though. Time that I introduced some of the people that we are hearing on this, as a matter of fact. Two guys singing in unison on this, apparently. Let's see. Okay. Bass, Andrea Parenteau, who I guess was in some bands before this, Les Sinners and Les Chancellors. He was in some beat band, Quebec beat bands of the 60s, and later in the decade, he played on the, at least one of the Len Goulevent records. Yeah, they were like a chamber folk band of the later 70s, released 2 albums, like 77, 79. He's on the second one, at least. I don't see the first one on here, on his Discogs list of instrumental credits. Yeah. Those like big booming kind of like open like at the start of sounding off every figure of 8 like boom, and just letting the rising mellotron just kind of like simmer right over with accented like ivory notes. Oh, really epic drop to F. Yeah, F, and then drop the octave, yeah, to E flat. Yeah, I dropped like switching between F and F7. Yeah, guitarist Serge Vallières did I guess a lot of, well, he has a lot of vocal credits on. He's credited with guitar on the album, and let's see, the synthesizer the keyboardist and the drummer are credited with vocals on this album. Yeah. Okay, the guitarist played, a few years later, played with Ville Emard Blues Band. Yeah. A lot of people were, a lot of musicians in the Quebec scene were involved in that. Yeah, put out like a double album in '74. And some like singer-songwriters and pop stars from the country. Yeah. Okay, the drummer Pierre Ringuet, who is also credited with one of the people credited with vocals on the album, he would play, let's see, on quite a few albums by Louise Forestier. Yeah, kind of a chanson pop female vocalist from Quebec, and he's credited on one album by Offenbach. That's interesting. One of their late '70s titles, Traversion. And a few other like singer-songwriters from the nation. Okay, and the other person credited with vocals is keyboardist Jacques Perron, who also worked with Louise Forestier. I guess those two, the last two I mentioned were kind of a team, were kind of a package deal for a while. I'm trying to, it seems like actually, the guitarist was also, not as many of the same albums, but at least one of that singer's albums. It looks like all these guys at some point were backing, Louise Forestier. I've worked through like one of her albums. Kind of, I don't know. I think kind of like Quebec's answer to Francois Hardy. If I could be wrong, but. Synthesizer, once again, it's kind of like working, it's reined in more, it's like working along with the riff rather than playing against it. And that was Vos Voisins with the track
Il y a juste de T'ça.
There's Just That, yeah, from their self-titled 1971 album, released on Polydor in Canada, originally released as Holocauste À Montréal, with a cover that got the band in trouble, I guess, because it mimicked trash tabloid of the day, and the artwork, the font, the graphics were just so close. The album had to be pulled after like a week on the shelves, and then they re-released it with, I have to say, I'm not really fond of either cover. It was re-released with like a brick tenement type cover, not the prettiest sight, kind of. But then again, it probably goes, perhaps it relates to the lyrics, the lyrical content of the album a bit more. Yeah, just kind of bleak. I would have preferred something maybe a bit more surreal myself, more artsy. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. For more Rubies and Sapphires from the Voisin album and many other Quebecois acts of the 70s and early 80s, see the directory of albums by Quebec artists, Quebecois artists. Yes, I made a separate page for artists from Quebec, from Canada. I made one directory for artists from French Canadian art, more importantly from French singing Canadian artists, and one for English singing Canadian artists. So Corey Hart and Gino Vanelli, despite being from Montreal, are on the Canadian one, and Cano, who were actually from like Eastern Ontario, are on the Quebec directory because they sang in French. The one exception to the rule being Mahogany Rush, because one, I've always known that they were from Quebec, and two, having two Rushes on one directory I thought would be a little bit confusing. I always tend to think, what's the difference between what's one of the big difference? Okay, what's one big difference between Rush and Mahogany Rush? Well, there are quite a few differences, but one is that one is from French Canada, one is from Anglo Canada. Yeah. So anyway, getting kind of sidetracked there, but anyway, like and subscribe. Follow me on social media. Share the video on the music platforms, and leave a comment if there are any observations you have about the two tracks we just heard. The arrangements, the sounds, the layers, the colliding forces of organ, synthesizer, guitar, drums, vocals, the effects that had on you, your favorite musical passages, and the lyrics, most importantly. If you understood them, you know what they were about, yet what are your interpretations of the meaning? And until next time, this is Zaragon, the world's most ear-traveled trimaximalist, signing off.